the sharp October wind swept down off the granite peaks above Cold Creek, driving a hard frost that turned the valley soil to stone. Clara Vance stood on the porch of her late father's rented cottage, holding a single copper kettle and a canvas bag, watching the town deputy tack a foreclosure notice to the front door. When her father passed in early autumn, the landlord in town wasted no time claiming that the old man's debts swallowed every square foot of the property, right down to the small garden plot Clara had tended since she was a girl. She was 27, orphaned and penniless, left with no kin and no place to go. The townsfolk of Cold Creek had watched her father work himself into an early grave, yet when Clara offered to clean houses or mend clothes to pay off the debt, every respectable door in town was closed against her. A woman without family or wealth in the high country was viewed with suspicious pity, as if poverty were a disease that might spread. Clara was too proud to beg on the church steps, and too stubborn to let the dry goods clerk see her weep. She gathered her small bag and walked out past the edge of town to an abandoned line shanty at the base of the timberline, choosing a leaky roof and cold draft over the cruel, whispering eyes of the valley. The first few weeks in the shanty were a desperate battle against starvation. Clara gathered pine knots for fuel, patched the chinks in the timber walls with dried moss, and boiled wild roots in her copper kettle. She had no money for flour or salt, and her pride kept her from walking back into town to ask for credit. By late October, the frost deepened, and Clara's strength began to fade. That was when the eggs began to appear. Every morning at dawn, sitting quietly on the flat stone step outside the shanty door, Clara would find a small wooden basket lined with clean straw, holding 6 fresh brown eggs, and occasionally a small crock of sweet butter or a handful of coarse salt. There was never a note nor a footprint in the hard frozen dirt. It didn't take Clara long to guess who was leaving them. Half a mile up the ridge lived Silas Thorne, a 34-year-old timberman and farmer, known across the county as a quiet, solitary man who spoke little and worked from dark to dark. Silas had buried his younger brother 3 winters back after a logging accident, and since then he lived alone on his quarter section, keeping his own counsel and avoiding the town's affairs. On a freezing morning in mid-November, as the first flakes of a coming blizzard began to fall, Clara waited behind the timber door. When she heard the heavy, quiet step on the porch, she pulled the door open. Silas stood there in his canvas coat, a small wooden basket held in his calloused hand, startled by her sudden appearance. Silas did not offer soft words, nor did he look at her ragged hem with pity. He looked at her pale face, her steady eyes, and asked the direct question that had been weighing on his mind all autumn. "Can you manage a hearth and keep the cold out, Miss Vance?" Clara looked at the quiet giant, her voice level and unvarnished, despite her trembling jaw. "I've kept a hearth lit since I was 10, Mr. Thorne," she said flatly. "I can stretch a pound of lard through a hard month, card fleece, and bake bread out of coarse meal. I ask no charity, and I give no trouble." Silas nodded once, a slow, solid gesture. "I've a double-built timber house up the ridge," he said, his voice deep as a mountain river. "My mother's old wing has been shut up since she passed, but the hearth is good, and the roof doesn't leak. There's a heavy door that locks from the inside, a feather tick, and an iron stove. You come up the ridge, keep the house, cook when you're able, and I'll pay a fair weekly wage. You'll owe me nothing but honest work, Miss Vance, and no man crosses your threshold without your leave. Will you come?" Clara looked into his plain, unvarnished face and saw no deceit, only the quiet decency of a man who could not bear to see a neighbor starve. She picked up her bag, took his offered hand, and walked up the ridge toward his timber house just as the blizzard closed in. When they reached the ridge, Silas opened the heavy door to the east wing, lit a kerosene lamp, and kindled a fire in the iron stove until the cedar logs crackled with heat. He set a jug of fresh milk on the table, handed her a heavy brass key, and stepped back onto the porch. "The bolt works from the inside," Silas said simply. "Rest easy, Miss Vance. The morning comes when it comes." That night, for the first time in months, Clara lay in a warm bed behind an oak door that was hers to lock. In town, she had been discarded and ignored. Here, there were no prying questions and no demands. Silas rose before dawn, fed his stock, and worked his timber stand, leaving fresh firewood and salt pork on her porch, without expecting a word of dramatic gratitude in return. As 4 feet of snow locked the ridge in December, Clara set about earning her keep with a quiet, fierce devotion. Silas's house was sturdy, but it had grown gray and cold around a man who merely used it as a shelter between work shifts. In the parlor of the east wing sat an old, dust-covered loom and crates of raw sheep's wool that had sat untouched for years. Weaving was Clara's true hidden craft, a skill taught to her by her mother. She found crates of raw wool in the loft, washed and carded it by the fire, and set to work. She dyed the wool using natural barks and walnut hulls she gathered from the woods, creating rich shades of navy, rust, and forest green. Under her hands, the old loom came alive, rhythmic and steady, filling the quiet house with music. She wove heavy overshot coverlets and thick wool blankets. The first coverlet she finished, a striking pattern in deep indigo and cream, she laid across the foot of Silas's bed while he was out in the woods. When Silas came in frozen from the timberline that evening and saw the warmth brought into his dark room, he stood motionless in the doorway, running his calloused thumb over the tight, perfect stitches. For the first time in 3 years, the cold shadow left the big timberman's eyes. By mid-December, news that the castaway girl was living up at the Thorn place reached Cold Creek. Mrs. Gable, the town's self-appointed moral guardian, braved the packed snow in her cutter to visit the ridge, her eyes bright with malicious curiosity. She stepped into the warm kitchen, sniffing the air filled with the scent of pine dye and fresh-baked bread, and found Clara at the loom. "Clara Vance," Mrs. Gable began, her tone dripping with artificial sorrow. "The whole town is scandalized. A young woman living right here on a single man's place. It is a terrible disgrace. You ought to come into town and take a room in someone's wash house until spring." Before Clara could answer, Silas stepped through the heavy timber doorway, his boots caked with snow and his broad shoulders blocking the light. His voice was quiet, but it carried the cold weight of an avalanche. "Mrs. Gable," Silas said, "I left eggs on this woman's step when she was starving, while your righteous church passed her by without a glance. She lives here, in her own wing, behind a locked door, earning her wage by the labor of her own hands. A town that lets an orphan freeze to protect its appearances isn't a town whose opinion I value. Clara stays by this fire as long as she pleases, and you may drive your cutter right back down my road." Mrs. Gable turned red, pulled her fur collar tight, and fled to her sleigh. When the snow packed down before Christmas, Silas loaded a wagon with his timber and several of Clara's intricate quilts and coverlets, bringing her down to the township market in Cold Creek to sell her work. The coverlets were an instant sensation. Merchants from 2 counties away bid against one another for her blankets, filling Clara's leather purse with silver dollars. In the middle of the crowded square, the landlord who had evicted her saw Clara well-dressed, prosperous, and standing beside the most respected timberman in the district. Driven by spite, the man pushed through the crowd and shouted for all to hear. "Look at the pious weaver," the landlord sneered, "living in a lonely man's house all winter, taking his charity because she couldn't pay her father's debts." Clara did not flinch, nor did she step behind Silas. She held her head high, her voice ringing clear across the square. "I paid for every crust of bread I ate, with the labor of these hands," Clara said. "And today, I have earned enough to buy your rent house outright. I took no charity, sir, but you took an orphan's garden and threw her out into the frost. Let this town decide who holds the shame." The townsfolk murmured in agreement, turning their backs on the landlord, who slunk away into the alleys with his reputation ruined forever. By Christmas Eve, Clara had her own bank account, a reputation as the finest weaver in the territory, and more orders than she could fill in a year. She was entirely free, beholden to no man. On a crisp, starlit Christmas night, as the snow glistened on the timber ridge, Silas walked out to the porch, where Clara was standing by the hearth fire. He stood beside her, looking out over the quiet valley. "Clara," Silas said softly, his plain-spoken voice steady and deep. "I left eggs on your step in autumn because I couldn't bear to see you cold or hungry. The winter is deep now, but your purse is full, and your name is clear. You have your own money, your own good name, and the means to go anywhere you like. You don't need my house, and you don't need my shelter." He reached into his coat, pulled out a small wooden box, and gently took her work-worn hand in his own. "So, I'm asking you now, not out of rescue, but because I love you. I don't want a housekeeper, Clara. I want a partner for my life. Marry me. Let me build you a farm right here on this ridge. Your own loom house, your own garden, and a home that's yours by right. Stay because you choose it." Clara looked into the honest, steady eyes of the man who had left eggs on her step when the world turned its back, and felt a deep, lasting warmth flood her soul. "I chose this home the night you gave me the key, Silas," she answered softly. "I'm staying because I love you." They were married on New Year's Day, under the high pines, with the whole valley attending to wish them well. True to his word, Silas spent the spring building her a beautiful farm and a grand weaving workshop on the ridge. Together, Silas and Clara built a long, rich life, raising 4 strong children and making their homestead a safe haven for any castaway or struggling woman who needed a hand. Framed above the stone hearth in their parlor hung the small wooden basket that had held the first 6 eggs on a cold autumn morning. It remained throughout their long lives a quiet symbol that the quietest acts of kindness can light the warmest fires, and that a life cast adrift by the world can build a permanent, beautiful home when held in honest hands. If this one warmed you tonight, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I hope it found you well. I'll see you in the next one.